All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Colloquium. It looks like people are still joining us, and that may continue to be the case. But even as we get started, I'm going to invite everyone. If you are not speaking, I'm going to invite you to put yourself on. Otherwise, I think we're getting some feedback. So maybe we can avoid that by all muting ourselves. So, welcome to Witness Colloquium. We're so glad that you're joining us today. We are here from a variety of places, but we as AMBS, Anabaptist Mennonite Biblical Seminary, want to begin by acknowledging that we are located on Potawatomi land, and the Potawatomi have been using this land for formation and education for thousands of years and continue to do so. In this work that we've been doing this semester in understanding and engaging movements of justice, movements for justice in 2020, it's been important for us as a Christian seminary to begin with that acknowledgement. My name is Jana Hunter Bowman, and I'm Assistant Professor of Peace Studies and Christian Social Ethics here at the seminary. And I do want to note, as you can see, that this is live on YouTube. And so you may want to consider that with the name that's there, just to know that this is being broadcasted. So today we have some panelists that we'll introduce in just one moment. And it is our delight to have this panel with us today to round out the semester in terms of external guest speakers. After hearing from our panelists, we will move into breakout rooms for some minutes, and then we'll come back for Q&A. So with that brief overview of what this hour together will look like, I want to turn it over to Jason Shank, minister, organizer here in Elkhart, and the co-instructor of Witness Colloquium this semester. So Jason, I turn it over to you to introduce our panelists today.
Thanks, Jana. And like you say, it's a pleasure to be here and an honor to have our panelists with us. As some of you saw in the email, we initially were going to have 3 panelists. Our third panelist, Alvaro Marquez, unfortunately has been in the hospital for over 2 weeks with COVID pneumonia. So he continues to be an important leader. We say he's fighting on a different front right now. So ask you all to hold him in your prayers, or in whatever way you can, to pray for his speedy recovery and for so many of those who are impacted by by the pandemic and the other facets of this moment, which is the very reason why we're so grateful to have Sanita and Marcus with us, to be drawing on the history and culture of various communities that have come over the years for navigating turbulent times like the ones we're in. I'll just do a brief introduction to Marcus first, and then he'll share, and then I'll introduce Sanita before she speaks. So Marcus is the director of the Department of Language and Culture with the Pokagon Band of the Potawatomi. Among his many public roles, he has served as a featured speaker for the course here at the Anabaptist Mennonite Biblical Seminary, the course, A Pilgrimage of Remembrance, Lament, and Transformation for the Trail of Death, as well as speaking as a keynote speaker to the Dismantling Doctrine of Discovery Coalition. He brings a long line from his family. His parents were very involved in the federal recognition of Pokagon Band, so he brings not only his experience, but that of his family. So we're honored to have you here, Marcus. And we turn it over to you to start us off as all of us are navigating these times, what wisdom and insight would you say the history and culture of your community could offer us in a moment like today?
Hey, regrets for having me. Just double check, you said 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Is that correct?
Yeah, 10 minutes is great, and then we'll loop back at the end.
All right, so First, Buju Jayak, Marcus Winchester, Indigenous Cast, Boda Wadmi, Mina, Odawa and Dao, Jigwe and Dodem. So I just said hello everybody, my name is Marcus. I'm Potawatomi and Odawa, those are tribes that I belong to. And then I told you that I was from the Thunder Clan, within the Potawatomi social structure or clan structure. So that question, how does Potawatomi history or culture, how could that be a guide or offer some insight into the times that we're going through? The first thing that pops into my head is something that we have that's called the medicine wheel. And basically, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are familiar with the medicine wheel, but for those who aren't, it's basically just a circle divided into 4 equal quadrants. And we recognize those 4 equal quadrants as being east, south, west, and north. And each of those 4 directions have gifts that the creator brings from those directions to give to the people, I guess is the best way that I can put it. So those 4 things are represented in there, and those 4 directions are represented by 4 colors, white, yellow, red, and black, each pertaining to a certain quadrants of the medicine wheel. And so those quadrants are all equal, and they also represent the 4 races of mankind, where that's part of the teachings of this medicine wheel. So the white represents the people of the European part of the Eurasian continent. The yellow represents the people of the Asian part of that continent. The black represents the people of the African continent, and then the red represents the people of the American continents. And again, all 4 of those quadrants are equal. So what that teaching tells us is that all 4 of those people from the different corners of Earth are equal as well. And so within that medicine wheel teaching is that the creator put everybody around the earth specifically and gave them their own teachings and their own stories and gave them their own way to honor and pray to the creator. And so a big part of Potawatomi way of looking at the world, to my understanding, or the way that I was taught, is that all 4 of those races are equal, and they all were given their gifts, and we have to all honor those gifts, and accept others' gifts and leverage our own gifts, and that's how we can contribute to the world, and make sure that everybody is working within the benefit of other people. And as we saw over this past summer, there was a lot of people voicing their opinion on several sides of several subjects of the spectrum. And so that medicine wheel teaching of how we all have our part to play and we all have a piece of the puzzle really is what's sticking out in my mind right now. And so to go further with that, the Anishinaabe people, that's what we call ourselves, the human beings, or the Potawatomi people. What we're told was that the creator placed the Potawatomi people here in the Americas, and our gift to contribute to the rest of the world was we were never supposed to forget how to live with creation. That was our gift to contribute to the rest of the world, because we have this prophecy that, without diving into too much details, the world would eat itself, be a cannibal. The people of the world would start using too many of their resources, start warring with each other. They would lose their way. The earth would not become sustainable to live on. And people would not live in a good way that was in harmony with creation. And the people of the world were almost going to wipe themselves out. And when they would get to that point, they would turn to the indigenous people of the world for guidance on how to live with creation appropriately again. And so that was our teaching, was to hang on to those things, because someday the world's going to realize, hey, there's a better way to live with creation. There's a better way to do things. And when I say by creation, I mean everything: people, the environment, animals, ourselves, all of that is a part of creation. And so the gift that the Creator gave us was to never forget those old teachings that He originally gave us on how to maintain a healthy relationship with all of creation that we have to live with. So again, that ties back to living with one another in a good way. But I also mentioned there's a lot of things to creation. So people, other people, animals, the environment and whatnot. And so our relationship with the environment is really important because our old ones attribute a lot of the sickness that's going around and a lot of these catastrophes in the environment and the climate. They're all because of we're out of balance in how we live with creation, and it's Sagamokwe, it's Mother Earth responding to the way that we're failing to live appropriately with her in a good way, and we're using her in a bad way. This is our home, and I heard a joke / quote one time, and it said like look at how these people treat the Mother Earth right now. How in the heck are they going to treat heaven or the spirit world when they get there? Are they going to pollute everything up there too? And so that really makes me think. But a lot of our old ones say that a lot of what's going on, the sickness and these wildfires and everything that's going on in the world that is pretty scary actually, is because we're not living in balance with Mother Earth, and she's responding to what's going on. So those are the things that are sticking out to me about Potawatomi culture in particular, and how it's helping me to interpret what's going on in the world. And I'm just one person. I'm just one young Potawatomi man amongst a couple million Native Americans in the United States, and then even more millions in Canada. So that's how my culture is helping me interpret what's going on, and that living in harmony and balance with all of creation is really the legacy of our tribe. Because as was mentioned earlier, I've done presentations, and some of you have heard them. The legacy of the Pokagon Potawatomi people and why we're still in Michigan and Indiana was because of our ability to leverage relationships and maintain healthy relationships with our neighbors. And so, dealing with all the riots and the unrest that were going on this past summer because a lot of the social issues that people are fed up with, the legacy of my people that's popping up in my head right now, of how we were able to work with a completely different culture and find some kind of common ground and move forward into the future. So I think that was my 10 minutes. I hope I answered your question. I hope I didn't ramble on too much or anything. So.
Well, thanks. And I know we only have time to just scratch the surface, but there's a lot of rich information you've given us to work with. So people can start jotting down questions they have, and I'm sure we'll go deeper in the breakouts. And as I turn to Sanita, maybe I'll ask if you have a question for us to consider in our breakouts. So I'll come back to you, give you time to think about that. But thanks for starting us off well with a really rich opening for this moment. So thanks, Marcus. I'm going to bring Sanita on screen here as well. Honored to have her as a neighbor and a friend. Is also Sanita serves as the executive director for Mennonite Women USA and is the co-pastor of Prairie Street Mennonite Church here in Elkhart. She has served as the lead pastor of a multicultural congregation just outside of Chicago, and has been a columnist for The Mennonite magazine. She's a community activist and advocate focusing on the needs of women and children in the areas of violence, education, and spiritual development. She's also married to her loving husband of 27 years, Stephen. Together they have 7 children and 20 grandchildren. So it's an honor to have you here, Sanita, and we'll turn it over to you with the same question that we asked Marcus to start off. What wisdom and insight can the history and culture of your community offer for navigating turbulent times like the ones that we're in? Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you all for inviting me into this space. And yeah, it's an interesting question. And so Yeah, I hope I can pull you along with me here. For us, history and culture go hand in hand. We have to, more than anything, we have to listen to our elders. We understood that our elders guided us and loved us out of their protection for us. We saw their pain and the pain of our parents, and we knew that the pain and the struggle that they were going through all had to do with their concern for our own well-being. We listened to them, we followed them because we trusted that their love for us, sometimes no matter how hard it may have seemed, we knew that they were looking out for us. I tell people all the time, tough love was perfected in the Black community. Like if you didn't have tough love, you didn't have love. And that was because they were trying to protect us. That tough love often came with physical punishment. It was imperative. And so for those that hear of us and talk about us, when we talk about spankings and things like that, and get really upset, especially in a nonviolent culture that we have here in the Mennonite Church, you need to really understand where that came from. Physical punishment was imperative because the world around us was trying to hurt us and kill us. Our parents' physical punishment was because they needed us to fear them above all things. We were given instructions and they needed us to follow those instructions to a T in order for us simply to get home safely. We were always clear on what the difference was from somebody being beat and somebody being spanked. And so oftentimes when people hear us speak about spankings, in their head, they think beatings. And our community was always quite clear on that and would speak out if a spanking verbally or physically went too far. But we knew and understood in order for our own safety of our own children, we needed our children to fear us like we ourselves fear God. Like we fear God out of this love and reverence for God's power. And that we, in the most part, for the most part of our lives, we want God to love on us. We want God to know that we love God so much that we will follow what God has asked of us. And that was the same kind of love that our parents and grandparents, community as a whole, was trying to show to us. So first and foremost was the power of our parents and their control over our lives. And much of that has been lost. The other piece in our community that has been seriously lost is the power of the Black church. So I grew up here in South Central Elkhart, and much of what you hear from me has to do with my community here in South Central Elkhart. But the reality is for Blacks, we migrated from the South up north and our family spread, but we carried so much of our same culture no matter where we went, it followed with us. But I speak specifically about South Central Elkhart. And the Black church was major in how we survived. The Black church is a meeting house, or was the meeting house. And we've lost that meeting house. The Black church was where we got our marching orders. That's where we got our news and our understanding of what we were being called to do and what we should do. My concern these days for what we are seeing is everybody seems to be scattered in thought. We're following too many different directions. There's too much so-called news out there for us, and much of it is wrong or has hidden agendas. And in that, we're all over the place. But in our community, for generations, the Black church was the center of that. And that's where we got our understanding of what we were being called to do as individuals, as families, but more than anything as community. And how the world would only hear from us when we came together in that kind of setting. From slavery to the 80s, the Black church was our place of refuge. Whether we ourselves had made mistakes or the community itself was under attack, we retreated to the church. And my concern for my community today is that that's not our retreat anymore. And that's not our safe space. And that's not where we're getting our marching orders. And I think our children are suffering behind that. As I watched all of the riots this summer that happened, even in the last few years of in our community, we've seen it one year after another year. Even as I watched all that, I kept telling young people to please look back to the civil rights movement and how they worked together to get the messages out. because it was a very succinct message, and ours right now is extremely scattered. The loss of the meeting place for our community in general has hurt us, and the church was a part of that. The church as a whole has messed up in this area. We became unwelcoming. We became hypocritical and compromising to the enemy, the outside world. We were so busy trying to be like the outside world. We became unwavering to our own brothers and sisters. So the very people we used to protect and look out for, we began to do just the opposite. So for me, when I think of these times, I just wish more than anything that we could return to an understanding of our community and our elders. It was clear to us that we needed our elders. We needed that history. In order for us to know where we were going, we had to know where we had been. And our elders were the ones that helped and guided us in that. And so that was extremely important, and it's still extremely important for us. The other thing was we realized we couldn't survive on our own. Like, we needed our community, and for everything. We were all poor, we were all struggling. And so when one struggled, everybody struggled. My husband tells a wonderful story about how when he was young, the next door neighbor at their house, electricity got cut off. And so what the mother at the next door neighbor did with his mother was ran electrical cords from their house to the other house in order for the other house to have some lights in their home, right? She couldn't afford, nor could they afford to help her cut her electricity back on, but they could run electric cords from one house to the next house to make sure the other one had electricity. That's the way we took care of each other. If we had a bag of rice and that's all that we had, that bag of rice would be split, and your family would eat rice today and we would eat rice today. We might not get to eat as much, but we all ate. And so our community understood the need of watching out for one another and our neighbor. And because we were stuck in South Central Elkhart, they wouldn't let us leave South Central Elkhart. It also brought about this understanding of fabric in our community of what it meant to take care of one another and look out for one another. I would say those are the biggest things. I do want people to understand very clearly, though, that correction for us was imperative to our survival. And especially in the last 10 years, 12 years maybe, since Trayvon, right around the time we lose Trayvon Martin and all of the young kids that followed, men followed afterwards. All of these were things in which our parents worked really hard to tell us how to act and how to behave in order for us to get home safely. And I think that is probably one of the biggest concerns I have for us today. It never changes for us. From the time we landed here on these shores, we've been fighting the same fight. America doesn't change at all when it comes to African Americans. And so it's the same story generation after generation. And so we have to understand what has happened in the past and how we dealt with it, and then try to make it fit for how we will survive today. But we're always in survival mode here in America, and I don't expect it to change anytime soon. Turbulent times are a part of who we are. And so we get through it by the wisdom of the elders, the strength of our community, and the trust and love in our God.
Wow, thank you for that, Sanita. Here's some similar themes, and even some folks are saying in the chat here about the importance of elders. And I wish that we would have had time to bring in elders actually into the room here. But I know we all have those in our community. I'm just bringing back Marcus to see if you or Sanita have any questions that you would invite us to consider. And I'll put in the chat this question we asked them. So we're going to go in breakouts in just a moment, but, and again, no pressure, but we can just go with this one. But is there any question that you would invite? Looks like there's about almost 50 of us here as we go into breakout rooms. Is there any question that you would invite us to reflect on?
I'm really interested and hearing from you guys, considering of the nature of a lot of the good work that you guys do, what methods have you guys seen that were successful to help conflicting groups find common ground and avoid violence and turbulence? Like, what has been successful around the world to bringing people together and respecting each other and respecting each other's place in creation? I'd be interested in hearing what those methods were.
Great. That's a rich question. Great. And anything for you, Sanita?
I would invite people to consider where then, if the church is no longer the meeting house, if the church is no longer helping people to understand direction, then where are we getting those messages, and are they helping or hurting us?
Great. Well, some rich questions here. So we'll go for about 10 minutes and you can have open conversation, make sure that everyone has a chance to speak, and then we'll come back here for open discussion. So when you see the invitation, please click join if you're able to join the breakout, and then we'll come back here.
Hello, Jenna. Sorry, I can't stop